Hello everyone, how you doing? Welcome to the live. Yes, a little bit running late, do apologise. Just a few sort of technical stuff. Nothing major issues really, more than anything else. So, hope you're all doing well. Hope you all had a really good week. Yes, how you been doing? Did you manage to see those videos that we did, I did earlier on today? Sorry there wasn't a lot of time between them and going live, simply because it was Sunday. And it's actually been thundering here all day. So we've had thunderstorms. So it wasn't easy. I couldn't do it outside. It's all a bit complicated and so forth. But yes, so I hope you're doing well. Hope energy's going well. You can ask questions during the evening. If you have seen that video on the souls and spirit and being, because that's the main thing that we're going to be going into a little bit today. I did do a video earlier on the week as well, and this is what provoked this sort of thing. And that was to do with the healing that I did with someone. And hello Kim, how you doing? Welcome. And so yes, did that thing where I met the Grim Reaper, and someone said it was. Tanya told me it was some people refer to it as the Angel of Death, or you could call it Mr. Black if you like Brad Pitt. And to be honest, once I, in the video when I'm talking about it, and we came to an agreement, he turned into Brad Pitt. Really, he turned into much more Mr. Black. Very nice, amicable. And it's a reflection of what you put out is what you get back in when you're regarding with sort of like spirits and so forth. So yes, I hope everybody's doing well. Let me just see. I just need to sort out something on that, like that. Sorry, I've just got technical stuff going on it. I do apologise. You know what it's all about. Just so I can get the comments up here onto the thing, which has appeared to have pushed my thing into the corner. So let me just pull that up. That seems to be a little bit easier. I don't know what's going on. Could this have something to do with that? It's because I haven't been talking about that Spanish electricity thing, and I said in the video that it was going to be happening over east of India. And it pretty much happened there, but just was a little bit further south, towards Bali. So it was, Seem? Is that Seem? Yes. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm probably not, but Seem. Hi, how you doing? Welcome. Yes. So technological stuff. My phone has just literally just changed the image size all by itself, like a grown up. So yes, now we're back onto spirits and energies and stuff like that, and sort of guides and what have you. I don't know if you've seen that video that came out about being spirits and souls. So basically, it was about the mechanics, because although personally speaking, I didn't have a religious upbringing, although I enjoyed at school religious education, which we learned about a lot of different types of religions and so forth, which was really nice. And I was very sort of like, as a child, I used to sneak off to sort of like spiritual evenings in a little chapel around the back of North London as a young man. And but I didn't really have that education around me about sort of spirits and souls. So it's all about what I gave a mechanic, and maybe that's what I should show you. We can go through that vaguely quickly. Yeah, I've got this back to that technical stuff. Terrible. Excuse me a second. I want to be able to go through the mechanics of it all, but as all my computer has just gone all weird on me, There you go. So this was the system I was talking about. This is you in the body, and then you have one guide that looks after the physical body, and another guide that looks after the physical body as well. And then you have two guides up here, which is like the spiritual interaction with the subconscious, and that ties in a lot to the intuition and so forth. And so they speak to you, creating this triangle here, and then the physical guides who speak to the root guide, who is basically back at the source of all energy. And energy is, and one of the things is all to do with the creator, all about creation and the material world, and that's what creates that secondary sort of triangle there, the yin and the yang, the Star of David, as it were. Once you put two sort of circles around it, it turns into the Soul of Solomon, which is all to do with judgment and so forth. So, you know, you've got this whole sort of like system. What do you think about, you know, when people talk about soul alignment and stuff like that, the idea that the way it was presented to me, the idea of a soul being a composition of more than one spirit, and, you know, each spirit has its role within the soul, and that soul is then tied into families and so forth. So we meet similar people within our worlds through the reincarnation system. And I got a funny story about that, really. My family was very interested in what you call it, genealogy, when you're talking about your history as a family and so forth. And it turns out my mum's and my sister, so my aunt and my mum, their families were my family, my mother's family, and the husband of my aunt's family. They found, I think, 2 or 3 connections in villages across the UK through, you know, churchyards, burial grounds, and everything like that, and records where the family actually connected. So it was very, very strange how it can all sort of tie in, and that ties in with that whole notion of reincarnation and reincarnation families. Do you ever get that sort of sensation with people around you? Is it people that you sort of kind of like, you're sort of saying, I know these, I've met these people before. You know, they are part of what we would call our soul tribe in a way. You know, do you get that sensation? Have you met people like that? Could it be that you're meeting another person who you knew as a guide in another life? You know, is there that sort of connection as well? So it was just how we construct the soul and the spirit, and how that plays into the reincarnation system and so forth, and how it can help you as well to sort of be in contact and channel that whole idea of, why am I here? What what is what is my mission in life, and where do I come from, and so forth. I don't know if you've seen that, or I don't know if you've got any sort of questions on that sort of front, but you can go back in past lives over, you know, great deal of different lives, basically, and you can definitely find purpose in it. But this life here seems completely different to me than any other life that I've encountered through, you know, my voyages into other, you know, reincarnations and so forth. This life here seems to be like an accumulation of multitudes of different lives that come together. And I will tell you my experience with my guides and so forth, because, you know, I've had the I had as my sort of my NDE, as it were, that when I was a lot younger, and it was, I felt very cut off from my guides. I almost, and Tanya will definitely sort of like back me up on this, is that, I felt like that I was no longer in communication for them for long periods of time, years in fact. And it was mainly through my learning process, and it was maybe because I was very concentrated on energies and what I was seeing and trying to learn and trying to understand the synchronicities or the intuitions and the understandings that were coming towards me, as it were, through life. And and I should sort of say, well, I don't have any guides because I don't speak to them. And there is other reasons behind that, which has to do with a much greater picture, to do with the changing times of the Akashic libraries that we're going through at the moment, but where my guides were sort of almost taken away from me. That's how I felt, because I'd been through that NDE, and I was under like caution, as it were. As if it was felt like I had my license revoked until I learned how to drive properly within my spirit. Maybe because if I'd been listening to my guides, I may not have had that accident. That's very, very possible. So for quite a few years, I wouldn't say I was dismissive about guides and things like that at all, because I understood, I'd learned a lot about the idea that what is the difference between the soul and the spirit, and I'm always asking those sort of questions and learning about it through the Akashic Library and so forth, of how the mechanics of it all works, I found incredibly interesting. And through that through that understanding, I know that obviously in theory I should be having guides and so forth. So I wasn't hostile to the idea. It's just that I didn't have the experience, I don't think. Now, when I was learning, and this is where things get a bit funny, as it were, when I was learning about energy and how the uses of energy and how we can direct energy to create a magnetic field in certain places, which help out a great deal. Evening, Johan. How you doing? I was learning from. I can only say that it was Shiva, because that's how it was presented to me. And the thing about Shiva is, Shiva, amazing spirit, really amazing spirit. Got a lot of time for Shiva. And the thing is, you have multitudes of different wavelengths of energy that's coming out of those swords. And also Shiva was a major dancer. So it's when dancing as well. I don't know if you've ever seen a film called Hero. It's a martial art film, but it's not all blood and gore. It's very, very spiritual. And there's a scene where, they have this combat within meditation, so they know what the end result is out of that. And, Shiva taught me a lot about understanding the different types of ways of composing energies to create a situation which it could be, sort of very beneficial. It's also, I learned a lot about sort of, shall we say, energy self-defense. I guess that's what we call it. Until you get to a stage, it's a little bit like Carlos Castaneda. You get to a stage where you don't, you're happy with yourself, so there's nothing left to defend. And you become a lot more at peace with yourself. So you're not, but then I was very young when all of that was starting off. I was in my very, very early 20s, before before the salt started taking over the pepper, as they say in France. You know, they say our guides. This is from Joanne. So yes, it's always good to chirp in. You know, whenever you want, more than welcome. They say our guides is with us before we leave home, heaven, and they are with us until we return. Oh, so you're saying so basically, if I'm getting this right, so when we leave heaven, they leave us. It is a bit like that. If you imagine, this is how it explains to me. I understand what you're saying here, Joan, totally. Or Joanne, sorry. If you imagine, like, up in heaven, we're going to call it heaven, you know. If you imagine an orb that you sometimes see in photos. Hello, Lynn, how you doing? Is that Lynn? Yes, is it? I've forgotten. Yes, Lynn. Oh, no, it's not Lynn. But anyway. Hello, Life with Lewis. I know it's not your name, but there you go. We'll come back to that. But yeah, Joan, the sphere is like an orb of energy. It's like a light. And yes, this is what I was talking about, reincarnation. If you imagine there's loads of orbs sitting together, and together they make a huge amount of light. And because that light is so intense, you can't actually see any other orbs around you. It's like trying to look at the light of a candle when it's up against the sun, you know, and I mean close to the sun. You know, you won't be able to see it for just the enormous amount of light that comes from the sun. And it's a little bit like that. So when you see a colour, and like a rainbow, so colours go in different frequencies, and they're going at different speed rates. And so when you notice a colour, you're choosing a particular sort of speed rate. And if you imagine that orb or that ball of light gets stretched out across the spectrum of colours, which eventually, you in theory, you should be living the ultimate colour that you've set off to live. But your guides are in that spectrum as it goes backwards. So I totally get that idea that, yes, it's not that they leave us, is that we're not in close proximity. That's what I think it's more of a case of that. Okay, it's Maria. This is Maria. Mike, it's in the comment, Tom. It's in the comment, Maria. Sorry, Maria. I do apologise. Okay, so hello, Tom. This is Maria. Hello, Maria. What is the difference between the soul and the spirit? So, soul is exactly as I was saying. It's like soul is a composition of. For me, it's a composition of 6 different sort of spirits. Let me just give you, where's it gone? No, there, Tom on direct. Let me just bring that up there. So basically, this is a soul for me. Okay, this is a soul. So you got actually 6 spirits. And as I was saying in the video, which you got on the channel, let's just say this spirit here, who is my guide or my bodyguard for the physical side. It's looking after me physically in the material world, as it were. And this bodyguard could be, someone from Africa, Asia, could even be Europe, doesn't really matter. All I'm saying is that they are completely, they have another family line. So this family line here goes out that way, where this family line of this guide goes out that way. So then, but you play a part in all of that. So you actually, I would experience, let's just say this person here is from like a shaman from Africa. And so I would experience being a guide for that shaman. And that shaman will then be my guide for me in this body here, which is called Tom. So a soul is, for me, is made up of 6 spirits. And each spirit has its own particular role to make. So it's a little bit like the atom and the, the atom and the electrons and so forth. So the difference between the two is that one is singular and the other one is a collection. And this is why we probably say soul tribe. And this is where we can meet up with people in our lives who, has been part of it in another life. And that's where we start connecting with people like that. Sorry for the confusion. There was no confusion. That's just me. I was being lazy and probably not reading it all. And just trying to keep on the thing. So no need to apologise. But, so difference between the soul and the spirit. Soul is much more collective. And therefore you have that lineage. Say like my mother. It's like some people say, my grandfather is my guide. I should imagine he's your biggest supporter, and you should be able to sort of hear him saying, come on, you can do it, encouraging you from a distance. But your guide is more like your trainer who's standing by the side of the field as you're doing whatever you're doing, the sport you're doing, But my grandfather has his own family lineage, as it were. So, but I also have that connection within that family lineage because it's my grandfather, and that's two orbs that's sitting next to each other that you can really sense the presence of the other, and you tend to sort of, it goes out like a flower of life. So it goes out like the flower of life that ends up as, a very complex thing, but it's all connected and everything is so connected. Excuse me. That's why I said at the end of the video, if we realise how connected we are, everybody, then we would feel differently about starting conflicts across the globe or putting certain groups of people into a very awkward situation, and that could be just, based on sort of finances or whatever, it's, once we realise that, I think this is part of that common sense revolution that I'm talking about, that I think is going to it's going to come to fruition, where we will be in the stage where there's just a common courtesy and respect between one and another. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with another person, but you can certainly have that common respect of kind of going, this is part of my family. I may not agree with my Uncle George, but at the end of the day, Uncle George is part of my family, and it's good to have different nuances and ideas and different ways of saying things. And I think this is part and parcel of learning, learning about life, and really being in alignment with yourself is really important. So I do it in a lot in healings as well, and there's complications that can come out of it. For example, that video that I talked about, where I was talking about where that person, in theory, should have passed over when they went into an operation. That should have been their card up, and that's when I met the Grim Reaper and so forth. But it's not the first time this has happened, and I remember I was working in combination with Tanya, and she was working with one of her clients, and so I was helping out because it was on a different sort of angle, much more within my side of sort of therapy, as it were. And this young person had a fixation about passing over, and the problem had been, and when I saw her, this is where I can understand totally the idea of guides and stuff like that, even if I wasn't heavily connected with them when I was younger, but and I probably was without even knowing it, but I saw that she'd had a situation come up in her life, and what often happens is, and it's not the only time, it's quite, I wouldn't say it's frequent, but it's regular enough to remember, as it were, But what happens is like, say like you're having a car accident, that's when your bodyguard then literally, because it sees a little bit of the larger picture, takes over your body and puts your body in a position where something just goes flying past you so you don't actually get hurt. And, they're limited about what they can actually do. But the problem, what happened was with that person there, is that the guide had taken the role of the driver of the vehicle, the spirit that's in the body, that's driving the vehicle. And she felt totally out of control over her body and her destination. And the thing is, that guide is not adapted because it's not connected to in the same way as the spirit of that family, if you know what I mean. So it created a lot of complications for her. So basically, had to get everybody in a huddle and kind of go, right, okay, this is going to be the play. Okay, you're going there, you're going there. And it's like, I think about football or soccer and stuff like that. It's kind of going, right, we're going to put you in attack, you're in midfield, you're going in defence, and you're going in goal. And there has been times when guides have turned around and sort of said, I don't want to be in goal. And they kind of go, oh, really? And they kind of go, yeah, I'd like to be out front a little bit. And there's, Dave's who's out front looking after the body, sort of turns around and kind of goes, go on then, I'll go and goal. I don't mind. And then someone else will complain, kind of going, yeah, but Dave's crap in goal. And it is a family within itself. It's like the inner conversations of our own self that we know we can have, that sometimes just goes off in multitudes of tangents. And it could be the time that you're actually speaking to more than one guide at one time. We talk, so this is another comment. Am I saying it right with Sim, I guess? We talk often about alignment to source, spirit and soul, or even self. I wonder about mechanics of harmonizing this 6-point structure. This is what I was talking about. Let me. What I'll do is I'll put up another thing as well here. Let me put up another thing which is easier to. I think it's easier to explain. Let me just pull that up because it is a difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to do that, and there is a reason for that as well, and that's why sometimes we struggle with getting that alignment in place. Is because of let me just bring it up. Here we are. Here we go. I'll get my tea out of the way. So here we are. Here's another example of it. It's a very simplified version, but that's where you get the flower of life. But if you imagine, like, that's the spirit that's in the physical body, in the here and now, in this material world. And this is the spirit that is at the root. It's at the where that orb was in heaven. So it's still up there. So it's making that bridge to the upper levels. But this circle here at no point interlocks with that circle there. And there's a bit of a rule of thumb in a way with energy in respect that never the twain will meet. It's a little bit like, because it's all down to electromagnetics. If you think of a light bulb, the wires of a light bulb, the blue and the red, they shouldn't be touching. If they touch, you're going to get sparks, going to have problems. And let me move my tea out of the way. And so that whole sort of realignment with yourself has to sort of go through your guides in order to get the true alignment. It's very difficult for oneself to just sort of say, okay, I want to go to the source and get that alignment, get that expression that I first saw when I was up in heaven, and I want to be living that. Because it's all to do with the experience. And sometimes, if you imagine you're like a painter and you've got to make up a certain color blue, you'll put a bit of light, you put a bit of dark blue, maybe a bit of white, maybe a bit of yellow to make it slightly a little bit green. And you're gradually adding things to gradually try and make that color there, which is the primary color of oneself. And that is one's goals, the ultimate purity of the goal. And that's where we construct it through life, and that could be through spiritual practices, also through sport, through business, through life, through family, through all of those sort of things. And it's understanding where we are within that community, within that position, what maybe is that ultimate goal that we can remember that comes from the higher self. So it is, I understand that it is totally, does that, I hope that makes it a little bit clearer, but, it's not the easiest of, okay, so I'm just coming back to the message because I wanted you to answer. So here we go. And the 0 point you mentioned, where would it be on this diagram? Okay. Oh yeah. Right. Okay. So because it's slightly out of body, let's bring that diagram back up. Thank you. This is brilliant. This is exactly how we should explore. This is exactly it. If you imagine it, that's it there, right at the center. That's that 0 point. You put yourself in a point where you're no longer, that 0 point is when you calm everything down and everything's calm. It's almost as if you're not sitting within the body, but you're not in heaven. You're not astroplaning elsewhere, which you can do as well. You can use that 0 point then to voyage, and that's what I do when I go to the center of the earth and so forth. But that 0 point is there, and that is the point when you can hear everything. And that's why the 0 point helps, is when you have that 0 point, that's when your guides can really help you feel the changes in the energies that are around you, the changes in the energies that are around you, which together make up the answer, make up the intuitive idea or thought or sensation. It depends on how you work, and people work differently. Some people are much more physical, so like what we would call an empath as well, where people will feel it a lot more, and then other people are auditive, so they'll hear it a lot more, and other people will see it with the inner vision. We all have our own strengths or superpowers, as it were, and we all have our part that we're really bad at. And that's why the family goes so well together, because your strength becomes my strength when we work together. And that's why we could do so much, not necessarily by thinking the same thing, but literally getting into alignment with something that can work for us all. So thank you. Well, thank you. That helps a lot. Great. I'm glad it does. It's very. This is why I do my workshops, because once you start, I'm with the YouTube. I'm sort of doing, I'm putting parts of the puzzle together to try and help out. But in the workshop, we literally just do the whole puzzle, and there is so many times during the workshops. Tanya will also be able to comment on that, but there is moments in the workshop where everyone has their enlightenment moment as regards to themselves. And it's understanding that some people are good at some things and people are good at others. And once we start working together, it helps us to also become better at the things that we're not so good at. And that really helps us then to sort of be in a lot more connection with oneself. And yeah, you should be doing it on a daily basis, like meditation or so forth. But I'm like a lot of people, a little bit too curious. And although I enjoy meditation and everything like that, and having that whole sort of stillness factor, I also like to bring my meditation into everyday life. I think it's very important, and that's bringing in a common sense consciousness. It's not talking about full consciousness, it's talking about, or Christ consciousness or so forth. it's talking about full consciousness, where we are conscious of the physical world, the mental world, the emotional world, and it all goes together in going down the market buying cheese from the local cheese farmer, which is absolutely brilliant. And it's connecting all these things. So, a lot of people ask about sort of like soul alignments, reincarnation, and all of those sort of things. And it's just, I think sometimes it's like the astroflower. Tanya and myself are doing some amazing, well, I say Tanya and myself, mainly Tanya, to be honest, if truth be told. We are doing amazing work on that side, which is in the future we will see the fruition of. But it helps, and we were talking about this earlier on, it helps to get a working model which allows us to then understand the ideas or the channeling or the information we are holding from within. And it's an easiest way, once we get that sort of mechanic, to tie the physical world and the spiritual or the energy world. And once you can tie those 2 points together, tie those two sort of worlds, like the sphere that was at the higher part and the sphere that was at the lower part in the image I showed earlier on, once you can connect those 2 points through that central 0 point, that's when you can see the mechanics working for itself, and you can also see when the mechanics don't work. And going back to that person who had that guide earlier on, I completely diverted from that subject, I think, but I'll come back to that, because the guide was in the place of the body, and it didn't really want to leave. And sometimes you have to be a little bit sort of direct with things, and a little bit sort of like, no, there's no messing around. It's like when I met the Grim Reaper this week. Yes, it was this week. You lose sense of time. Time is a spherical thing. It's not a linear sort of thing. He really came at me as if to sort of say, hey, you know what I mean? And it was like, you would perceive it as being attacked spiritually or energetically. And as I said earlier on, with the work I've done with Shiva, I'm well happy to go toe to toe with anyone or anything in the energetic world, no problem. But there's other ways of doing things. So usually conflict is made out of non-understanding and confusion. And once we put understanding, and we can then turn from confusion to understanding. At that point there, between me and the Grim Reaper, there was no problems, and everyone kind of went, oh, okay, cool, everything's good. But there was just this, it's like two dogs meeting in a way, just, and I, when the Grim Reaper came at me very strongly, and it was, I just kind of had to sort of like position myself as if to sort of say, hey, you know me, I know you, don't mess around, we're both on the same team, and we work for the same purpose. And the moment that understanding comes through, then we can sit down and have a chat and have a cup of tea about it, So I'm, yeah, that's another thing with working with spirits. You just, you got to know yourself and know that 0 point. And once you know that 0 point, a moment, energies or entities or spirits or try to send you off that central point, then you know that whether it can be a positive influence and it could be a negative influence, and therefore it's for you to sort of realize your position in life, if it is a positive or negative, and how you react to that sort of situation. But usually you can't really get harmed by anything that is around it. There's no real war going on. The only war going on in the spiritual sense is the people that don't have a lot of understanding and confusion, because that's where war comes from. It comes from confusion. So there's no real, I know it's going on. There's kids fighting all the time, but it's only because kids haven't grown up yet, and adults as well, they fight. and which is unbelievable why they fight. You know what I mean? No one understands it. Well, that's why it's the confusion. So, you know, when you have that sort of like understanding, you're not really involved in the negative and positive. It becomes a lot easier. And this is all about getting in alignment with your soul. And everybody's got to be doing what they're supposed to be doing at the moment they're supposed to be doing it. You know, I've renovated multitudes of houses, and at that point there, I'm not healing. I'm not in that healing vibration, and it's knowing my place. You know, of building a wall, putting up bricks. You know, and being, it's almost like you become that bricklayer. You know, and I love bricklaying. You know, I really enjoyed doing all of that sort of thing as well. So it's enjoying the moment, which is really important, and that's when I think it's much easier then to get in alignment with your guides and also with your higher self and so forth. Once you start enjoying the moment, even if the moment is quite difficult and so forth. So, you know, that's all part and parcel of it, and the reincarnation, and so and that sort of thing. There is that whole idea of the reincarnation. You know, I feel like I'm hearing someone sort of saying, well, how does karma work into that? You know, I do a good life, I should have a better life. And, you know, it depends what you mean by better life. To be honest, I'm not the most rich. I'm certainly not the richest person in the world, and everyone can verify that. But, you know, I'm doing what I would do, and I love doing what I do, and I'm doing what I should do. And could I, you know, ask for a better life? I could ask for a different life, I guess. But I don't think, you know, once you start doing what you're supposed to be doing, you can get better. So there's no good and bad. I don't know if anybody's read a book called, it's by an author called Benjamin Hoff, Hoff, and he wrote a book called The Tao of Pooh, as in Winnie the Pooh, as in Pooh Bear. Absolutely brilliant book, and helped me as a young man to understand that good and bad didn't exist. It was a really beautiful. It's a really nice book, but it's part of those fundamental sort of understandings, and you know it can certainly help, and you know getting into alignment with your guides and souls and so forth, to help you to live the best example of what you're supposed to be living, and knowing it, and once you start getting on that pathway, you know you can't do anything else. You can be rich in many ways, not just by money. Exactly, totally, Joanne. You know, I don't know if you know a bloke called Imran Khan, who was a cricketer, who then became the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and obviously then he had complications and so forth. And he'd done an interview, and I listened to his interview, and it was a really beautiful interview. He comes from a very rich family in a very poor country. And so he was playing cricket a lot, so as a young man, and then he ended up playing cricket for Pakistan, and he was an amazing cricketer. And you know, in this interview, they were talking about money and wealth, and he says, "Are you rich?" And he says, "Well, I'm rich in certain terms, but actually, if you're talking about money, I find I have a fortune. I am fortunate." And he understood that idea that he was been born in a family that made him fortunate, that brought him fortune. And rich is something that you create, and this is my nuance. Rich is like something that we create, like a tapestry over one life. So a family cannot be fortunate until they're rich over several generations. And so, yeah, and I think richness, and I think this is what he was saying. He was sort of saying, I may have money, but it has nothing to do with being rich. Rich is being, you know, living life. And you have an enormous amount of wealth in other things. And I now, this could be a thing when talking to my guides. When I was a youngster, I must have only been about 7 or 8. And I think I've told this before. on the live, and I was as you do, you look up to the skies and you start speaking, because I was doing those religious education. I was just speaking to the man upstairs. Freedom and time is the most important. You can't get back time. That is so true. That's why time is money. You know, money is certainly not energy. It's not. I wouldn't compare it with energy at all. You know, it's. But that whole sort of money thing is that when I was 7, I thought we'd understood the fact, because in the 70s, you know, wars were coming to the end. Vietnam had finished and everything like that in 75, and wars were sort of coming to an end before, you know, the Falklands thing kicked off in 81, whatever it was, and well, certainly for the UK. So I just thought, okay, so we've understood that we shouldn't do wars. We understood within religion that we're all pretty much from the same family and we all got the same principles and everything like that. And the only thing we haven't understood is money. And I later on, and I said that, you know, maybe that's what we need to do. We need to understand money. And I said later on in a conversation with a friend of mine, and that was many years later when I was near my 20 years old, and we were talking about money. And, you know, he's a very good friend of mine. He's he comes from if you imagine, like a socialist background. So, you know, you look at money a little bit, you know, not in the most favourable way. I'm not anyone's judge here. I'm not getting involved in that sort of aspect. But I was trying to explain to him that we'll never get rid of money until we understand what money is. Once we understand what money is, it loses its shine. It loses its value. And I think that's where we're going. Understanding this connection we have between our lives, between our incarnations and within our guides and so forth, that we are all so connected. It will come down to respect for another person, which should be general, should be normal. But what we do in our lives will become very, very valuable. So if I'm, let's say, like I'm, you know, I build a car that doesn't consume any sort of natural resources in a way, just consumes the magnetic field, which we're getting very close to, you know, but doesn't actually produce anything, I can happily give that to the world, because it would make the world a much better place, and etc. It's free energy and what have you. But wherever I go, I will be known as that person who has created that car. I will be, you know, if I walked into a restaurant, people will probably sort of say, "Hey, please sit down, have a meal, choose from the menu. You know, absolute pleasure. You know, you did that car. Wow, it's amazing to meet you." And that's where, you know, you wouldn't need money, you know. And if you think about it this way, this is a very good conversation. But if you imagine if that money then didn't exist tomorrow, what would you do? What would you do? Put it in the comments. What would you do? That's the thing. If you're working all the time to pay for things that you think makes you happy, this is from Joanne, by the way. This is in the comments. If you're working all the time to pay for things that makes you makes you happy, that you think makes you happy, but you're not really enjoying it as you have no time, that makes sense. It's having a balance, and that is totally it. That is totally it. You know, Tanya and I wrote some books as well, and that was the whole. There was a big concept about that, of doing what you love, working at doing what you love, but not actually getting paid for it. But you're doing it because you absolutely love it, and people love what you do. So therefore, you can do it. And because you love what you do, then, you know, people can appreciate what you've created, and therefore they will look after it as well. Therefore, it will have a longer duration of life as a product.
But then when I go to that person who's, let's say I'm making shoes, if I go to that person who I've given some shoes to, and they make cheese, I'm sure they're going to give me some cheese, and I'm sure they make excellent cheese. And it is a little bit like sort of saying, what is the point of earning loads of? I think the human race has gone through that in the 90s and the year 2000s. That idea of just buying and consuming for consuming's sake. There's always been that in the 60s and 70s, pushing the consumer to consume, and that is all part and parcel of the learning. We had to go through that in order to get to a point where, as you say, Joanne, there's no point me earning. What's the point if it's? I think it is. I forgot what it was. I think it might well have been Elon Musk or something like that. He said he bought a house and he didn't want any neighbours, who ended up buying the houses around him, so he can have it. It's easy to himself, as it were. And then he kind of thought, what's the point of that? I'm not interacting with anybody in life, and what's the point? Unless you're running a motor museum, what's the point owning 20 cars? There's no point. Even 2 or 3, what's the point? You're just best off having a vehicle that works for you. And it's according to what you're living, and appreciating what you have. I don't have a great deal, but everything I have, I really appreciate. Even simple things like my thermos flask, which holds my tea. I love my thermos flask, which came from my daughter for Christmas, so thank you, Eva. But it's also, the other side of that, Joanne, as well, is that we go after lifestyles that we invest in enormously, not just financially, but time and everything like that. And then life goes on, and then this is the whole thing about time. We look back and we kind of go, man, who am I? And that's, you're not making it with you, you're not taking it with you when we leave it here. You were certainly too right. That's why I talk about the body. So, people talk about cellular memory and stuff like that. And I look at it like this, is that the cells within your body will be returning to the earth. So the memory within your cells, which do not go back over generations, because it's only tied into a body. The only thing that goes through generations is that DNA defect that carries through in lineage of people. So I might be born with a super muscular structure, but I get arthritis later on in life. But if I didn't have that super muscular structure, I wouldn't be able to do lots of things, physical things. And so I'm playing on that strength to do lots of things. And one of the things I've got to pay for it, you can't have a vehicle that can drive like a Ferrari, but also be fuel efficient. Do you know what I mean? You've got to choose whether you're a Ferrari or you're a fuel efficient car, and it's that, it's that whole idea that, the cells within your body is collecting the memory that when you give your body back to the earth, because that's where everything comes from, your telephone, your money, your car, your house, it all came from the earth, and that's what it's all going to go back there. And when your body goes back there, the earth will then read your body, read your cells, and then the earth can kind of say, okay, so the humans are doing that then, are they? Right, idiots. That sort of thing. So, yeah, you can't take it with you. And I would prefer to leave nothing behind other than that can be useful to my kids. That surely should be the name of the game. So, it's, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you. Does anyone have any sort of encounters with your own guides? Does anybody got a little insight to sort of tell us on their sort of side of things? because people talk about it all the time, sort of saying, you know, that's my guides talking to me. And like, you know what I mean? Even when I've lost the keys and I can't find the keys, you know, I literally stop for a minute and kind of go, you're going to have to help me out here, guy. You're going to have to help me out. And, you know, I got a friend who calls it the parking fairy that helps them to find a parking space and stuff like that. You know, I know you agree, Joanne. Feel it. It's great, isn't it? That's what that common sense consciousness is all about. So, you know, I have that moment where I kind of, you know, when you stop thinking about it, then that's when you find it, because your guides are helping you. And it's like literally, I'd almost stop and then it'll be under something that's right next to me where I've stopped. And then that's where my guides are kind of going, look, just put him in the right place. Is he in the right place? Okay, make him look down now. Oh, there they are. So we do feel, you know, I can imagine the guides. Can you imagine them? They're all going to be sitting there just kind of going, oh, Kai, they're just under his nose. It's like playing Pictionary all the way through. It must be incredibly frustrating. I don't want to say frustrating, but it must be quite... You've got to have got a good sense of humour in order to be a guide, really, when you think about it. You know, because guides must be spending that whole time just kind of going, oh, my word. Have you just seen what they've done? You know, and it's just like kind of going, why do they choose that? They really shouldn't be with that person, you know. I told them, and kind of going, it won't listen, you know. And then you're in the car, you're driving the body, and you're kind of going, oh, that backseat driver that keeps pestering my mind all the time. And that's where a busy mind comes from, because there's not clear communication or not clear mechanics between ourselves that are in the driving seat and our guides and stuff like that. Hail Mary, full of grace, help me find a parking place, works every time. Totally get it. I get that there is obviously, there's been a new, it's like a zero hour contract jobs that come out where people are just kind of going, yeah, there's a new thing opened up. We need a lot of angels to help people find parking spaces. You know, there's a whole sort of thing. As like, when I'm doing healing, sometimes, like, I've got to say, like, I had a healing session with someone, and I was giving a healing to someone. And this person had a very, very complicated life. And it was so complicated, their life. I'll save it for another day because it's actually quite a long story. But if you imagine, it is so complicated. What this person had created in their life. And I was just sitting there, and my guides were sort of, they were almost, I could feel them sitting on my shoulders just kind of going, oh my word. At what point did this person think it was a good idea to do that? You know, I could feel my guides almost just kind of get just in shock. The idea of their guides, of the person, it's just like kind of going, what is going on? Why are you not helping each? It's like shooting yourself off your face, you know, shooting yourself in the foot, or cutting your nose off to spite your face. And we all do that. We all do that. And I just, you know, sometimes I do picture my guys just kind of going, what the blazes? What the blazes? You know, God. And I can imagine when you get upstairs as well, and you're doing a review of your life. So you're sat on the bench, you're looking at your life, you're going through all the details. You got your two guides that are looking after the body, the two guides that are looking after the spirit, and then there's the other guide that was, you know, the root guide, and the root guide's sort of kind of sitting there. He's got an easy one, you know, and you know, you know, can imagine you're just looking at something, and then the guide like leaning forward and looking over like that, and just kind of going, "See, look, that's when I told you to turn left, and you turned right, you idiot." It's comedy waiting to happen. I think you've got to have a very good sense of humour as well when working with energy and working with spirits and guides and so forth. You know, because that's why life is fantastic, I guess. It really is an absolute joy to be part of, you know. So, there you go. You know, I think it helps us I hope that mechanic helps you anyway to get your head round how to channel a lot easier your information for you, how you to feel at much more in alignment with yourself, and also in alignment with your higher self, which will give you that sense of this is exactly what I should be doing in life, and this is how I should be enjoying it. And don't forget, it should be fun. You know what I mean? I say at the end of every video, because people try and take it too seriously, and you've got to have those moments of just kind of going, you know, I'm such an idiot, you know. And there's times when you know as well as I do. There's times as well where you're walking along and you're just kind of looking up the top and you're kind of going, "You didn't see that happening. You couldn't have warned me about that. You couldn't have warned me about that." You know. So it's a family affair, really. A soul. It's like it is a soul family. It's what it's all about, you know. So there. Have you? Did you have any other questions in in regards to that sort of that sort of video or that sort of mechanics that I was showing earlier on, or anything like that? Because the more we question, the more we understand, and the more we understand, the less conflict there is in the world, and the more common sense we can start getting on the case. It'd be absolutely brilliant. So I'm really enjoying those energy videos that we're doing at the moment. If you're enjoying, I feel like that people are much more enjoying that sort of side of things, and also the messages from energy. And it's changed from what I was used to do as the energy update, although that is really important as well, looking at the sun. Someone said in the comment about looking at sunspots and so forth, and yeah, it's part of what we would call prana energy or chi energy. And when you look out and you can see that happening, it does help out. It helps us to understand a little bit more about life and of what's coming down the tubes, as it were, so you can prepare for it in a way. So I'm really enjoying doing the energy videos, and I think we're going to be expanding or exploring that in a much more sort of in much more detail later on in the future of this channel. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying them. If there's too many, they're timeless, so you don't have to watch everything straight away. I do feel I've listened to my guides. This comes from Maria. Sorry, I do feel I've listened to my guides to get on my correct path. Correct path, but I have been having more difficulty than ever with the fun part. Obviously, there's a lot of things that it depends upon on what you're trying to do, but let's just yeah, I'm totally enjoying the energy videos. That's good. Never too many. Okay, we get more and more going on there. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you very much as well. Liddy. Is it Liddy? Yes, I think it is. Liddy? Oh, yes. Lovely. Hi. Always fun to listen to. And makes everything so accessible. It's got to be fun, isn't it? And this is a good thing for you as well, Maria. Don't be hard on yourself. Whatever I could be doing something in life and someone could really throw me a bad card, a really bad card that can obviously you've got to trust people and so forth, and they may really do you wrong, as it were. But when someone does that these days, I'm almost looking at it as kind of going, that's crazy. To actually do that, you got to construct some sort of like consciousness to do that. And I find a lot of funny stuff in bad, crazy stuff that people do. And I don't know if that's what it's all about. And I can understand that sometimes life is really difficult and hard to, and there is hard lessons. And I'm not saying that they're they're 5-minute lessons. They can, it's an understanding that sometimes can take years to go through. And I think I'm touching into your sort of situation there that happens in the world around us, but also majorly affects us as an individual. And as I said, with life, to understand every angle, there is a time when we have to go through that. There's multitudes of things that are connected to that sort of thing. That is obviously sort of memories, joy, and happiness that are connected to situations that are around us that change, which then that void is created. But if you will get to a stage, you will get to the stage where that void will then become a blessing from that situation that you can fill as you see fit. You've got it's never a case of forgetting anything, but you can't, because something happens to something around us doesn't, it shouldn't mean that it also happens to you, if you know what I mean. You're still living it all, and I know it can be difficult. I really do. I understand. That void is very, very painful, but at the same time, it should get to a stage in the where that void can be. And I think the people that are concerned with that sort of thing would only want that for you. That's the sort of message I'm getting from them. That they know it's not easy, but the only way is up. That's that Yaz song. The only way is forward. And I should imagine you hear that loads and stuff like that. But at the same time, there is a moment where you will probably be able to realise that I've got to create this for me sort of sensation running through you. That joy has to come from within me. Yeah, it'd be lovely to share it with certain, with people around us and everything like that. And we haven't always got the opportunity to do that. But it doesn't stop you from sharing it with others. But it doesn't change the amazing connection you might have with anything that you had before that is no longer there, as it were. That doesn't change. And that is always eternal. But there is also there is life to be living, as it were, so are you talking to me there, Liddy? You must reach out. You must. Yeah, I know it's not easy, Maria. I really don't. I really understand. And and I do understand as well that I think it's perfectly okay to look up to the heavens and kind of go, what the? Are you serious? What the? What the? Are you serious? I'm struggling to see the reason behind that lesson, and I can understand that totally. And I don't think there's anything wrong in doing that as well. Yeah, people. How do you say, Liddy? Yeah, people. They're amazing. It's amazing. I think humans are amazing. They are absolute. Individually and collectively, we are amazing, and we're probably only doing only 5% of what we could really do. Thank you for the reminder, and at the end of the video, absolute pleasure, Maria. Everybody's world's a better place when you're looking after your happiness and cultivating your happiness and trying to make not trying but engaging in your happiness. It starts with the first step, and you never know where it takes you. Could be a great laugh. Could end up in Vegas. Could end up in Vegas. Yeah, but I think this is an amazing planet, and I think that's why we attract a huge amounts of interest from entities from across the universe, because we have an amazing situation, and we have a lot to explain to the universe that the universe can't explain to itself, that the entities can't explain to itself, that only us we can. So humour is so important, certainly is, and you should always start by laughing at yourself. That's why you can't take it too seriously. I do it every morning when I look in the mirror. Kind of go, blimey, look at that. It's just getting worse and worse. So, yeah, always start with yourself with the humour front. We have this is from Joanne. We have a soul contract before we come here, and what we want to experience, but we forget it once we're here. Yeah, I know. That is one of the annoying things with the reincarnation system, isn't it? You know. But at the same time, at the moment, this is where we come down to the karmic block. I've said it before, in my healing, I've noticed that we've come to the end of that contract. We are at the end of the contract. And that's why we've got all of this changing that is happening. It is time. And there's no need to worry about it, because it's a mechanical thing in the universe. That's what the universe does. You know, and it's a rhythmical thing. And you can't change it. We can only influence it. And the more fun we have, genuine fun, honest fun, as you were saying earlier on, Joanne, about sort of money and stuff like that, genuine fun, which is felt across the board, will help enormously to the wheels of mechanics, the wheels of the machine, as it were. You made me, you know, so I think, oh, that's good. Well, I made you laugh. That's good. I'll tell you a joke if you want. A good friend of mine, I used to go dowsing with when he used to do healing and stuff like that. He says, I always start off with a joke, because when you start off with a joke, it puts people in a very relaxed sort of state of play. And it's like a spiritual joke. I'll use the clean one. I'll do another spiritual joke the next time round. You've got a yogi master on one side of the river, and he's walking down one side of the river, this yogi master, and on the other side of the river, he has one of his students, and his student calls over to his yogi master and says, "Yogi master, how do I get onto the other side of the river?" And the yogi master turns around and says, "You are already on the other side of the river." I think that was right. I just got doubting my own jokes now. Oh blimey! I should have told this slightly more dirtier one, which is all about reincarnation. But yeah, I should tell that one. So some lady wanted to get in contact with her, with someone, and you know, they were speaking to her and said, it's Dave, and Dave, they say contact Dave, and Dave, you know, says, "How's it going, Dave?" He says, "Oh, it's absolutely brilliant." He kind of goes, "Oh right." He goes, "Heaven's amazing." He goes, "Yes." He goes, "What do you do?" And he goes, "Oh, what? Every day?" "Well, every day I wake up, I have something to eat, I make love, you know, I go for a swim or go for a run, and then I have something to eat, go for a snooze, make love." It's absolutely brilliant. He kind of goes, "Wow, I never knew that's what heaven was like." And the person replied, and the spirit replies, and says, I'm not in heaven. I'm a rabbit in Australia." You know. So that's my slightly dirtier joke. Yes. So yeah, fun. Humour is. I'm glad I made you laugh. You know, it's part and parcel of it. You know, there's obviously majorly serious parts of all of this, of energy and of life and stuff like that. But Sunday night is for enjoyment, curiosity, learning. You know, let's not be hard on it all. I'm going through a spiritual awakening at the moment. This is from Joanne. At the moment, can't watch TV, can't handle noise or crowds. Fasting and fatigue. So is this like a choosing to fast? Or, you know, or is it like you're just not very hungry at the moment? Spiritual. Do you like the joke? Did you? I got better ones. I'm not going to go into them now, but I get you. We get them on another day. So there's a lot of people going through that spiritual thing, you know, and it also it's according, you know, there's a lot of difference between the generations as well and the spiritual awakening as well. And that's also down to the different types of karma, the two types of karma that we've got working together at the moment. In the future, there's only going to be one type of karma, but at the moment, it's the two going together. And I can understand. I don't watch any TV. I don't. You know, why would you want to watch TV when you can just walk outside? I just like, you know, it's just like I like a good film. I will say that I like a good film. I listen to a lot of plays and stuff like that as well, which is really nice. But yeah, you know, I don't mind crowds. Doesn't bother me at all because I go into it in a state of meditation, and so it doesn't really. I don't let it bother me if I don't want it to. So it. I think it should get easier for you, Joanne. But you do have to get out there, and you know, don't try too hard. That's the first thing. Don't try too hard, and don't forget to enjoy the moment. And you know, we're going to get things wrong. I'm going to do a video on the shadow self, the shadow side, and everything like that. It's all rubbish on TV. Yeah, tell me about it. That's, you know what I mean. I used to be on the BBC doing. I used to be on the BBC radio on the Sunday, once every Sunday, as like an energy advisor sort of thing. And then I did a couple of things on the BBC TV. And anybody who worked with me, we all ended up getting sacked. I think it's because I was basically spitting too many truths. That's what the problem was. And it's a shame because it went really well. It looked really good. But yeah, TV is pretty rubbish. It's also very much a way of, you know, it's a tool. It's you know, it's a tool, in not necessarily in the nicest of sense in the most of the times. So TV is really difficult. Only knowing what you need. I like music. I love music, Jan. I love always having music with me. Not all the time, obviously. If I am out walking in the forest and that, I do like the sound of the birds and everything like that. But I do enjoy music, so I have to have that with me. But I can select what I listen to, and I think that's when you become spiritually conscious about things, you end up then you're selecting what is actually good for your soul, which nourishes you and helps you to move on, you know, and do what you've got to be doing. That seems to be the thing. I enjoy going to the beach and being in nature and grounding. Yeah, totally get that. Love going to the beach, putting my feet in the sand, doing that with my toes. That's all to do with the Seven Wonders. It's absolutely brilliant. News. No, I wouldn't listen to the news. Yeah, it's if you want the news, go outside and listen to a tree. I do look at a lot. I create my own news in a way because I look at a lot of what's going on in earthquakes, in volcanoes, and things like that. So I don't really, I don't listen to the news as such. I just happen to see it come across that whole thing about what was going on in the Philippines with the blackouts in the Philippines, which is all to do with that magnetic field coming through. I happen to see it just, it's obviously one of my guys that put it in my feeds, as it were, on the social media. But I don't. That's the only news I really sort of listen to. How you all doing? It's all good to see you all and everything like that. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've just realised the time. I think it's getting a bit late. Obviously I could do this. We could do this all day long. It'd be absolutely brilliant. But this is some people. You've gone off food. Let's get back to that. Yeah, sorry. You've gone off food. I didn't see that. Do you know, I'm very similar at the moment. I'm not eating a lot. I've lost a lot of weight. And there's periods during the year that we gain and lose weight. You know, there's a whole thing behind weight loss and everything like that to do with energy, and I help a lot of people. To do that, because there's multitude of things that attach to it. But yeah, I'm very similar at the moment. I'm not eating a great deal. There's other times in my life where I was eating a lot more than I'm eating at the moment. You know, I haven't said hello, Coral, yet, by the way. I don't think. Lovely to see you here. I bet it's early in the morning for you. I hope life's going well and all the family's good and everything like that. Yes. So, yeah, as I say, I hope you enjoy all the energy videos. Yes. And, we will see each other next week. I think it's a good time to sort of say Saranyasa, as I say. Thanking you as well, Joanne. Thanks, Tom. They say we're going through a shift right now, and food and sleep, it will affect us. I think sleep is really important. My Cody had obviously been out. He'd obviously eaten something when he was wandering around, and he wasn't very well this morning at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. And so I woke up at 4 or 5 in the morning with him to obviously help him out because he was having issues. And so I didn't really go back to bed. So, and I was missing a lot of hours, but I'm usually quite good. I need my 6.5 hours sleep in one hit. And usually I'm pretty good at that. But then it depends where I put those 6.5 hours. It can change slightly. I'm actually awake. Was here from the beginning. Oh, were you? Sorry. Okay, well, I didn't know whether you'd just woken up. But lovely to see you. I hope it's all going well in autumn down there. It's been quite rainy down there as well, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's been rainy here as well. Apparently it's got quite cold in the UK. And I think the Japanese summer ski resort has opened, and it's the first time it's opened with 31 feet of snow or something like that. Big dance night. My feet aren't working so well this morning. Excellent. Always good to dance. You can dance while doing the washing up. It's always good to dance. Life is about a dance. The whole Shiva thing. I think that's probably why I get on with Shiva so well, because we all like a good dance as well. But yeah, okay. Look after those feet. Kick the shoes off and dance bare feet. Probably be a bit easier. So, yeah. I'm going to say Saranyara. I will see you all very soon. We will be doing, obviously, the live next week. We've got some other videos coming out this week, and it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go to the I'm going to go to the crossing point and go into the, because I want to see what's going on with that, that void of energy, seeing if there's anything coming out there. If there's anything that comes untoward, I'll put out a video. If not, I'll be going into it on the messages from energy. And also there's obviously, the readings and so forth that we do as well on this channel and stuff like that. Stay curious about life, enjoy, explore, and expand. Enjoy that consciousness. Okay, so thanking you all for being here with us. I hope everybody gets the best out of it all. Very much appreciate you all being here and joining in the fun. And I will see you soon. In the meantime, I guess that's all for me left to say is, don't forget, life should be fun. So please do enjoy.